So imagine for a second that you were playing this really high-stakes board game, right? Like every move matters, the tension is just palpable, but there is this brutal catch.
Oh, I hate games like this already.
Right, yeah. You are only allowed to see exactly 2 steps ahead of your current position. The rest of the board is just, completely shrouded in fog.
Wow. Okay, that sounds stressful.
It is. Because meanwhile, the person you're playing against isn't constrained at all. I mean, they can see the entire board. They see the beginning, the middle, the end, all the hidden traps, the whole overarching strategy, just the grand design.
Right.
So how much anxiety would that limitation cause you?
I mean, it would be paralyzing, honestly. Every single move you make would feel like stepping onto a potential landmine, because you are practically flying blind. You'd become completely obsessed with just surviving the next turn.
Exactly. You'd be sweating every single decision, just entirely trapped in the immediate moment. And, well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the world of classical Sufism.
Yes, specifically looking at a really profound commentary on Rumi's Mesnevi.
Yeah, and our mission today is to explore how these ancient, deeply mystical fables can radically shift how you, living in the modern world, perceive reality. We're going to look at the mechanics of anxiety, the illusion of physical loss, and how we react to the things we simply cannot control.
And Sufism itself is so fascinating because, well, it's the inner mystical dimension of Islam. So instead of just focusing on, orthodox rules or outward rituals, it is entirely concerned with the direct personal experience of the divine.
Right.
It operates on this premise that there is an exoteric world, the literal physical reality we bump into every day, and an esoteric world, which is the hidden spiritual architecture that governs everything.
And what's wild is that the fables we're looking at, they don't just offer abstract theology, they actually provide this psychological map for navigating the tension between what our physical eyes see and what the soul actually knows. And while this philosophy is ancient, the stories they use are surprisingly grounded. Like sometimes they're tragic, sometimes they are darkly comedic. So let's jump right into the first one, the fable of the mule and the camel.
Yes, the classic.
So the mule is utterly exhausted, just complaining bitterly to the camel. The mule points out that he is constantly stumbling. Like, if the mountain path is bone dry, he trips over rocks and falls flat on his face.
Right.
If the path is muddy, he slips and falls flat on his face. He just can't win. So he looks at the camel and asks why the camel never seems to lose its footing.
And the camel's answer, it introduces the core mechanism of this entire philosophical framework. The camel explains its physical advantage, which is its height. It provides a completely different vantage point.
Yeah, a literal top-down view.
Exactly. So when the camel reaches a high mountain pass, it doesn't look at the rocks directly below its hooves. It looks far ahead to the very end of the path. It locks its vision on the ultimate destination.
But the mule...
Right. The mule, however, is consumed by myopia. The mule is only looking 2 or 3 steps ahead.
It's just staring at the dirt. I mean, it sees a few stray grains of food on the ground, dives for immediate gratification, and completely misses the deep pit hidden right underneath that grain.
Yes.
And the psychology of this is just so striking to me. The mule isn't just an animal here, right? It represents a state of human consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how much energy we spend locked onto the immediate friction of our lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Like an angry email, a sudden expense, a bad commute. We are basically lunging for the grain and completely ignoring the overarching trajectory of a career or a marriage or just a life.
We really are. We are biologically and culturally conditioned to prioritize the immediate. But this tradition defines wisdom not as, raw intelligence, but as the capacity to see the inevitable chain reaction of events.
Right.
And there's another narrative in the text that perfectly illustrates why failing to see this chain reaction causes so much conflict. It involves this very old man with severe tremors who walks into a goldsmith shop.
Oh, this one is so good. So the old man asks the goldsmith to lend him a highly sensitive scale, right? Because he wants to weigh some extremely fine gold dust he brought with him.
Yeah.
And the goldsmith looks at the old man shaking hands and just says, "I don't have a broom."
Which sounds completely nonsensical.
Totally. The old man is taken aback. He assumes the goldsmith just misheard him, so he speaks up and says, I didn't ask for a broom, I need a scale. Stop joking around." And the goldsmith replies, "I don't have a sieve either."
And at this point, the old man just becomes furious. He assumes he's being mocked by some arrogant merchant. But the goldsmith's logic is actually entirely sound. It's just based on a wider cognitive map.
Right, he's seeing the whole board.
Exactly. He tells the old man, I am not deaf, and I am not mocking you, but I'm seeing the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
The goldsmith understands the mechanics of reality here.
Hmm.
If he hands a delicate scale to an old man with violent tremors, the old man will inevitably drop the scale.
Yeah, and the fine gold dust will just scatter all over the dirt floor.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the very next thing that old man will demand is a broom to sweep up the dirt and a sieve to separate his gold from the dust.
It's so funny, but so true. The goldsmith isn't denying the request for the scale. He's just refusing to participate in a disaster he can clearly see coming.
Right.
But the old man is trapped in step 1. He is completely blind to step 2 and 3.
And the real tragedy is that the old man's ego prevents him from recognizing his own limitations. He thinks he just needs a tool, but the goldsmith sees the entire ecosystem of the interaction.
Wow. Yeah.
True wisdom is stepping back and understanding the architecture of consequence. But, this philosophy doesn't stop at just being careful about cause and effect. It takes this idea of seeing past the immediate and applies it to the very concept of physical suffering.
Which brings us to a much heavier concept, the illusion of physical reality itself. Because the fables challenge our core assumptions about pain and loss through the story of this mountain dervish.
Yes, the dervish.
This mystic makes a solemn, binding vow to God. He declares that he will never again pick fruit directly from the branches of the trees. He will only consume what the wind naturally blows down to the ground.
It is a vow of ultimate surrender. He's relying entirely on the unseen world to feed him.
It's a profound structural contract with reality, right?
Yeah.
But the environment really tests that contract. For 5 consecutive days, the wind ceases entirely.
Not a single leaf moves.
Nothing, let alone a piece of fruit falling. So the biological reality of starvation sets in. The hunger becomes absolute torture, and finally his endurance just snaps. He reaches up into the branches, plucks a pear, and eats it. He breaks the vow.
And consequence is devastating.
Yeah.
Almost immediately after breaking the vow, a group of local authorities sweeps through the area. They're hunting a notorious gang of thieves. And in the chaos, they mistake the dervish for one of the criminals.
Oh, man.
They drag him before a magistrate, and in this brutal miscarriage of human justice, they amputate his right hand as punishment.
Okay, I have to pause on this because, and I think you'll agree, it is incredibly difficult for a modern mind to digest this.
Oh, completely.
It is very easy for a mystical philosophy to just casually declare that the physical world is an illusion. But getting your hand cut off hurts. It is a permanent, traumatic, life-altering physical loss. How does anyone process that without descending into complete bitterness?
Well, they process it by understanding that within the framework of takdir, which is often translated simply as destiny, but it operates more like an invisible, inescapable net of spiritual physics.
Spiritual physics, okay.
Yeah, within that framework, the loss of his hand is not a random, chaotic tragedy. It is the direct mathematical result of his broken spiritual vow. Think of it like an ecosystem. If you introduce a toxin into a closed environment, the environment reacts.
So the broken vow was the spiritual toxin.
Exactly. The dervish understands that his physical suffering is just the universe balancing its metaphysical equation. The narrative actually compares his mindset to the magicians in the story of Pharaoh.
Oh, right. When Pharaoh threatened to amputate the magician's limbs for defying him, they were entirely unfazed.
Yes.
And the explanation given is that they viewed the physical world as a sleeping dream. And that metaphor is crucial, I think, because if you are having a nightmare and someone cuts off your arm, it feels terrifying in the moment.
Right. Your heart is racing.
But the instant you wake up, you realize your body is whole and the damage was never real.
The physical body in this tradition is really nothing more than a temporary garment or like a shadow cast by the soul. The true self cannot be cut, burned, or destroyed.
Wow.
And the dervish accepts this mechanism so thoroughly that the story ends with a complete suspension of physical laws. He becomes known across the land as Sheikh Akta, the handless sheik.
Right.
But years later, a curious visitor peers into his solitary hut and witnesses an impossibility. The sheik is rapidly weaving baskets, utilizing 2 invisible, miraculously restored hands.
That is just, wow. He sacrificed his reliance on the physical world so the spiritual architecture provided a bypass. He lost the physical hand to gain the spiritual one.
Exactly.
But the implications of this are massive. I mean, if the physical world is just a temporary dream state, it completely redefines the mechanics of grief.
It upends our entire psychological approach to death. The philosophy pushes this dream metaphor to its absolute limit with the account of a highly revered sheik whose sons pass away simultaneously.
Just a completely devastating loss.
Naturally, the human response around him is overwhelming. His wife, his devoted followers, the guests in his home, they are all weeping uncontrollably, tearing their garments, just entirely shattered. But the sheik remains seated, perfectly tranquil. He does not shed a single tear.
And his wife is horrified, right? I mean, she looks at his calmness and accuses him of having a heart of stone. She demands to know how a father can show zero mercy or sorrow for his own children.
Yeah, but the sheik's explanation reveals the depth of his spiritual vision. He tells her that weeping is a biological and emotional reaction to separation. You cry because something has been taken away from you.
Right.
But the sheik states plainly that his sons are not gone. He insists he can actually see them, vibrant and alive, playing in the very room with them.
You know, the most accurate way I can translate this into modern terms is to imagine the sheik is wearing a highly advanced VR headset.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, like his wife and the grieving guests are sitting in base reality.
Yeah.
To their physical eyes, the room is empty, the chairs are vacant, the tragedy is absolute. But the sheik is plugged into a higher frequency.
Yes.
Through his spiritual vision, the boys haven't ceased to exist. They have just stepped out of the heavy physical simulation and into the permanent lighter reality. He doesn't mourn because, in his perception, no separation has actually occurred.
To him, the guests are crying over an empty cocoon while he is actively watching the butterfly. And this raises a really big question. Why can the sheik see this frequency while everyone else is blind to it? The fables offer a fascinating mechanical explanation for this through the story of a man who lacks physical sight entirely.
Right. There is this blind man whose only desire is to read the Quran. He has zero interest in seeing the physical world around him. So whenever he opens the holy book, he prays for his sight to be returned, but explicitly asks for it only for the duration of his reading.
Which is such a specific request.
It is, and the words miraculously illuminate for him. He reads the text, and the absolute second he closes the cover, he returns to total blindness.
He deliberately chooses blindness to the physical world because he understands the concept of spiritual bandwidth.
Bandwidth, right.
Yeah, the fables describe the human soul as a pitcher meant to hold the pure water of spiritual understanding. But this pitcher has 5 holes drilled into it: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell.
So as long as those 5 physical senses are open and actively engaged, they are constantly draining our attention outward. We are so mesmerized by the colors, the noises, and the physical sensations of the immediate world that the water of spiritual insight just leaks out. The blind man doesn't want his physical eyes open because he knows that seeing the mundane world will drain the focus he needs to perceive the divine.
And this challenges the listener directly. Like, how much of your internal bandwidth is being drained every single day because you are entirely captivated by the physical simulation?
So much of it.
Right. True sight, according to these mystics, isn't about opening your eyes wider. It's about deliberately closing them to the distractions of the material world so the internal picture can finally fill up.
Which brings us to the ultimate test of this internal vision. This is the epic, almost surreal journey of a spiritual seeker named Dikuki.
Dikuki is fascinating.
He's a man obsessed with finding God's hidden saints, the architects who operate behind the curtain of physical reality. He wanders the earth, desperately trying to tune his frequency to see them.
And his wandering leads him to a desolate shoreline at twilight, where he experiences this profound unveiling of the esoteric world. He witnesses a visual phenomenon that just defies all physical logic. He sees 7 massive, radiant candles on the beach, and their flames are reaching up into the cosmos.
Wow.
As he watches, the 7 candles merge into one singular pillar of light. Then, that light transforms into 7 men. Finally, the men shift into the forms of 7 colossal trees, with roots plunging deeper than the earth and branches extending beyond the visible universe.
The imagery is just hypnotic. But what makes this scene brilliant to me is the tragic irony happening right next to it.
Yes, the caravans.
Right. While Dikuki is staring at these magnificent, glowing, fruit-bearing cosmic trees, there are caravans of weary travelers walking right down the beach.
They're passing right by.
Yeah. And these people are starving, exhausted, and thirsty, but they cannot see the trees. They are entirely blind to the spiritual feast right beside them, to the point where they are physically fighting each other in the dirt over a few rotten apples they found on the ground.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the pitcher with 5 holes. The traveler's bandwidth is entirely consumed by physical scarcity. They are the mule, fighting over the grain, totally oblivious to the mountain.
Exactly.
But Dikuki's internal pitcher is full. He perceives the 7 men, realizing they are the high saints he's been searching for. And the saints recognize his spiritual rank. They invite him to step forward and act as their imam, to lead them in prayer.
And Dekuki steps into this incredible honor. But, and this is the turning point, while he is leading the prayer, a crisis erupts in the physical world. He hears a terrifying sound out on the ocean.
A ship caught in a storm.
A violent, brutal storm. He can hear the timber splintering, the waves crashing, and the desperate, terrified screams of the passengers who are just moments away from drowning.
Right.
And Dekuki's heart shatters with human compassion. I mean, naturally. So in the middle of this sacred prayer, he begs God to intervene and save the ship.
And the physical world responds to his plea. The storm instantly calms, the waves subside, and the ship is saved.
A miracle.
But the spiritual consequence is immediate. When Dekuki turns around to face the 7 saints, they are gone. They have vanished completely.
This is the part that is so hard to swallow. He spends his entire life searching for the hidden architects of reality. He finally finds them, and then he loses them by doing what any normal person would consider a heroic act.
Right.
He prayed to save lives. Why does that cause the saints to abandon him?
Because Dekuki's prayer revealed a fundamental failure in his spiritual surrender. He looked at the storm, he heard the screaming, and his ego determined, this is wrong. This event is a mistake that needs to be corrected.
Wow.
By asking to stop the storm, he interfered with the divine architecture. He assumed he knew better than the designer of the board.
He showed pity, and pity implies that the creator made an error.
Exactly that. At a human level, compassion is absolutely necessary. But Dekuki was interacting with cosmic forces. The fables explain that the highest echelon of saints never ask to alter destiny.
They don't try to change the board.
No, they do not beg for the storm to subside, because they understand that the hurricane is necessary to water the continent. They have reached a state of submission so absolute that they find the bitter medicine of fate to be as sweet as sugar.
That is heavy.
It is. They don't just tolerate tragedy, they accept it as a flawless component of the grand design.
So Dekuki regressed. In that moment of panic, he reverted to being the mule. He looked at the immediate tragedy of the sinking ship, the next 2 steps on the board, while the saints were operating like the camel, seeing the ultimate necessary destination of those souls.
Yes.
It is a level of psychological surrender that is just staggering to comprehend, like watching a disaster and refusing to fix it because you trust the blueprint.
It is an incredibly heavy demand on the human psyche, which is likely why the philosophy balances Dekuki's cosmic tragedy with narratives that are deeply human, exploring how this absolute trust looks in everyday mundane situations.
Because total reliance on the unseen often looks like absolute madness to everyone else.
Oh, completely.
And there is no better example of this than the story of the man and the cow set during the time of the prophet David. There's this man who makes a radical decision. He refuses to participate in the physical economy.
Right, he opts out completely.
For 7 straight years, he prays day and night, demanding that God provide him with halal food-meaning sustenance that is purely, righteously earned, completely free from the corruption, theft, or moral compromise of the daily hustle. He wants his purity handed to him directly from the unseen world.
He essentially demands that the spiritual architecture bypass the physical rules of labor.
Right.
And then one ordinary afternoon, a cow casually wanders through the open front door of his house.
And the man doesn't hesitate. He looks at the cow, looks up at the ceiling, says, "Thank you for answering my 7 years of prayer," and immediately slaughters the animal for food.
Without a second thought.
None. He doesn't go door to door asking if anyone lost a cow. He doesn't check for a brand. He just assumes the universe has delivered his halal feast. Of course, in base reality, the cow belongs to a hardworking, wealthy farmer who lives nearby.
And the farmer, naturally, discovers what happened, storms into the man's house in a rage, punches him square in the face, and drags him by his collar to the prophet David to face a criminal trial.
The man's legal defense is completely absurd. It's so funny. He stands before the judge with a bloody nose and essentially argues, "Your Honor, I didn't steal anything. I prayed for 7 years, and God delivered a cow to my living room."
Which is not a great legal strategy.
No. Naturally, the entire town gathers to watch, and the crowd is vicious. They universally condemn him as a lazy, delusional thief. Even the judge demands physical proof of purchase or inheritance. You cannot use divine intervention as a receipt in a court of law.
But the psychological state of the man is what makes the story profound. Despite being physically assaulted and publicly humiliated, he is entirely unfazed.
Yeah.
The narrative notes that he looks up at the sky and identifies with Joseph in the well. When Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and thrown into a dark, inescapable pit, he heard a divine voice assuring him he would eventually triumph. Joseph trusted that internal frequency, even when his physical reality consisted of a dirt hole and slavery.
And the man with the cow is doing the exact same thing. He is sitting in a hostile courtroom, getting punched, listening to a mob call him a criminal, and he is internally smiling.
Because his internal validation completely overrides his external circumstances.
Yeah. He knows the sheer volume of spiritual labor he put in for 7 years. He trusts the unseen mechanics more than he cares about the physical evidence of his guilt.
To the crowd, whose internal pictures are drained by the physical facts. A dead cow, an angry farmer, a lazy defendant. The man's a dangerous fool. But to himself, his faith has just been miraculously validated.
Wow.
The philosophy uses this dark comedy to show that once you actually tune into the esoteric frequency, your actions will inevitably appear insane to the exoteric world.
You stop playing by the rules of the 2 steps you can see, and you start moving based on a board only you can perceive. Well, we have covered massive ground today.
We really have.
We started with the myopia of the mule and the foresight of the camel. We examined the handless basket weaver who treated trauma as a waking dream. We watched Dakuki lose the hidden saints because he couldn't stomach the storm. And we ended with a man smiling through a beating because he trusted the unseen origins of a stolen cow.
Every single narrative we explored points to one unifying psychological shift. The understanding that what we perceive with our physical senses, the immediate crisis, the pain, the injustice, the terrifying storm, is only a fragmented, tiny fraction of the architecture.
Just 2 steps on the board.
Exactly. In our daily lives, we expend vast amounts of energy desperately praying for the storms to stop. Just like Dakuki did for the sinking ship, we want the pain to end immediately. We want the problem solved right now.
We constantly demand the grain of immediate relief.
But this philosophy challenges us to ask, what if the storm you are desperately begging to be saved from is exactly the hidden medicine you require?
Oh, wow.
What if the hardship you are fighting so hard to avoid is the precise mechanism designed to push you to the mountaintop?
If you are constantly trying to control the physical world, fighting every wave, plugging every leak, and trying to fix every discomfort, you are trapped in the mind of the mule. You are sweating over the next 2 steps of the board game, completely blind to the strategy being played out across your entire life.
But leaving this deep dive, there is a fascinating contradiction to wrestle with.
Yeah.
If true spiritual enlightenment means reaching a state where you accept the storm without trying to fix it, well, where does that leave us?
Yeah, think about our modern world. We have built our entire civilization on the refusal to accept the storm. The pursuit of medicine, the creation of technology, the fight for social justice, all of it is driven by the human desire to look at a sinking ship and say, I'm going to fix this.
Right.
So if the ultimate spiritual goal is to never interfere with the divine blueprint, are we doing it all wrong? Are we actually meant to fix the broken world around us, or are we only ever meant to fix the way we look at it?